This is the content talk for the CLASS tool. CLASS stands for Classroom Assessment Scoring System. CLASS has become the leading tool in early and elementary education for examining the context of classrooms and particularly the types of teacher-student interactions that are facilitated in the classrooms by individual teachers. In this workshop, you will be looking at the CLASS tool to understand how it is organized and what it measures. We will present research on the connections among the effective teacher-student interactions, the CLASS tool, and students' learning. We will also discuss other uses of the CLASS tool and identify each of these types of interactions across the 10 domains. My name is Dr. Carrie Snyder, and I am a certified trainer in the K-3 and the PreK CLASS tool. I'm also a reliable observer on each of these tools, which means I can conduct scientific observations for research and evaluation purposes. What we determine our lens is going to be when we're examining something often determines what we concentrate on. For example,
My spider!
Your spider, can I write those letters on there that says Desiree Spider?
if we look at this lens, we can take a negative aspect and be critical and think about what might this teacher be doing that isn't best practice.
It got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
15 legs? Okay, can I write that on here? Desiree Spider? What does your name start with? Do you know?
With a D.
D.
So sometimes teachers will say, oh, she's ignoring the other children around her, or wow, there's not very much space for people to move around, or she's not giving the child eye contact. If you had a negative lens, maybe those are some things. Now let's take a different lens. Let's think about all the ways that the teacher is helping the child think and progress in the activity.
E. Z. I. R. A. Y. Desiree Spider. All right.
Do you like my spider?
I love that spider. You saw it here and you looked at it with that little magnifying glass, didn't you?
So, from a positive lens about how children's thinking is facilitated, the teacher's pointing out, reinforcing what the child was interested in. She's helping the child to connect her understandings with literacy and other math concepts, and she's using positive and warm tones of her voice in her interactions with the child. So, how we are looking at things definitely makes an impression on what, as observers, we are looking at. So it's also important when we talk about the CLASS tool to think about what makes effective classrooms. Normally, if we were together in a classroom face-to-face, this is a time we would brainstorm with one another. I encourage you to pause the video now and come up with some ideas about what makes a classroom effective. Maybe as you thought about what makes a classroom effective, you thought about classroom management, organization of the environment, having the tools and the materials and resources that children need to be accessing in order to be positively engaged in the classroom. Maybe for an effective instruction, you said that the teacher needs to understand how to question and engage children. Many reasons and many facets of teaching comprise effective teaching. So the class, its goal is to be able to observe all of the different complexities of the classroom and all of the different elements that creates effective teaching. The classroom assessment scoring system is research-based, and it's a tool that helps measure effective teacher-student interactions. It does capture the complexity of the classroom and allows us to examine the interactions teachers have with all of the students and individual and small groups. It also aligns to professional development that promotes increased learning and capacity of teaching for the adults. The class tool has many different versions. There's an infant version, a toddler version, a pre-K version, a K-3 version, an upper elementary version, and a secondary education version. The pre-K and the K-3 class tool are organized in the same way. There are 3 broad categories we call domains: emotional support domain, classroom organization domain, and instructional support domain. When we look at the different domains, we further see dimensions under each domain that organize and operationalize the larger overarching idea. So let's just take a look at the left-hand side, and we'll start with emotional support. In this domain, it is operationalized by 4 dimensions: positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, and regard for student perspective. These are 4 different dimensions that comprise that overall category of emotional support. Further, each one of those dimensions has its own indicators. For example, positive climate consists of relationships, positive affect, positive communication, and respect that's communicated between teachers and children. Then each one of those is operationalized even further with behavioral markers. So relationships, we would be looking at the teacher and the physical proximity that she or he has with the students. We would be looking at things like shared activities. Is the teacher involved in the activities or standing back and not participating? Classroom organization is the second middle domain. In this particular domain, it is operationalized by 3 dimensions: behavior management, productivity, instructional learning formats. In instructional support, that is the final domain. Concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling are the 3 dimensions that we examine when we want to know how teachers are facilitating children's cognitive development, thinking, and language skills. For example, concept development is operationalized with the indicators analysis and reasoning, creating, integration, and connections to the real world. Now let's take a look at what is instructional support. The other domains we will focus on at a different time point. Let me go back just for a second. Before I talk about instructional support, let me tell you about emotional support and classroom management and why we spend less time on it and more time on instructional support. Over several years, research that has been conducted with the class has helped us understand nationally that teachers do a really good job with emotional support. Most teachers have a high average score in that particular domain, which means they're providing children with high quality interactions that help them feel safe, help them feel respected, help them feel a part of the community, help them to engage with their peers productively, help them to get along with one another, and minimize distractions, minimize any sort of instances that delay learning. So most of the time, these are things that teachers are doing really well. Instructional support, however, are the 3 areas, the 3 dimensions that we are low in. And when I mean low, Teachers, when observed with the class tool, can be low, they can be mid, or they can, which would be average, or they can be high. The higher the teacher is, the better that teacher will help that child's academic development. So clearly, we want to help teachers become better with concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. In your work this semester, when you are implementing activities, whether through your project work or through your play class, you will be focused on asking questions and facilitating the learning using these types of strategies. We have taken these strategies and incorporated them into our observation feedback form so that you can learn to identify these practices in the teachers you're working with, but also learn to identify how to take these practices on yourself. In the instructional domain, teachers are helping children learning to solve problems. They're helping children think and reason. Often this comes in the form of helping children brainstorm, plan, produce as they're creating. Often children are being helped to evaluate. Maybe they are predicting, maybe they're analyzing, they're comparing, they're contrasting. Teachers are connecting what children have already done as learning experiences or that they've already experienced in the real world. That's really a part of the concept development dimension. When quality of feedback is used, that is feedback that teachers are giving in response to children's actions or thinking. So if a teacher sees that a child is struggling putting a puzzle together and the teacher walks over and begins to have a conversation about hints, cues, and scaffolded support, that's feedback that's helping the child expand their current level of operation or their current understanding. This also happens when teachers are wanting to deepen their skills or deepen their knowledge. They use feedback as well as appraisals to help children persist when learning is hard. They go beyond saying, "Good job," or "Gee, you're doing so nice." We go beyond what we call perfunctory feedback and we tell children descriptively what they are doing well so they know what they're doing well and they will keep doing it. So you may hear something like, "Wow, I can see how hard that was for you to work on writing your name, but look, you did it. You have all the letters of your name on your paper." Really emphasizing not only what they did, but how they persisted and persevered. The last piece of instructional support domain is language modeling, and that's where teachers facilitate lots of conversations, ask open-ended questions, repeat and extend children's comments, add advanced vocabulary so that they actually define the terms and the words that children are hearing in conversations as well as in learning lessons. And then finally, teachers are putting this all together so that children can develop complex language skills. Here's a picture of language modeling. We can see that the teacher and the child are in conversations. We listen for frequent conversations. We listen for teachers to use that self and parallel talk. So that is where they map out their own language. That is where they map out their own actions. You know, as we think about all the things we do in a pre-K or kindergarten or first or second or third grade class. But it's very important for language learners to hear us say, "I'm going to walk over and pick up the story of the Very Hungry Caterpillar and I'm going to bring it over. We're ready to start reading." That would be self-talk. You're mapping out your actions. Parallel talk would be when you walk over to that child and you say, "I see you're over here. You're using these new markers to write your name. Look how hard you're working." And so now I'm taking that parallel talk and moving it into quality of feedback. Concept development, as discussed previously, this is where we're promoting higher order thinking skills. We're using skills like analysis and reasoning, questioning, getting children to create and produce their own ideas, their own products, rather than paper, pencil, worksheet completion, rote memorization tasks. We are helping children integrate ideas. So remember yesterday when we saw the turtles outside and we started drawing pictures of turtles? Today we're going to read a book about turtles and find out more about how turtles move and where they live, because that's what we wondered. So that would be an example of how you would integrate experiences that children had in your learning experiences at school with lessons that you've planned. And then of course connections to the real world. Teachers extend students' learning through their responses to students' ideas, comments, and work. So we scaffold. We provide feedback loops. Feedback loops are back and forth exchanges where teachers are responding to children and then building on those comments. That's really important. Let me find you an example of a back and forth exchange with some feedback loops that I can provide. Hold on one second as you're listening to this content talk. So for example, perhaps you're reading a book with children, and so you're talking about what the children see happening on the cover of the book. And then as the children give you a response, you build on that response and you say things like, I wonder how the author and illustrator knew how to do that. What do you think is going to happen to that ice cube? What do you think is going to happen to that snow? Of course, I'm pretending that there's snow and ice and all sorts of things that are on this book. And so the teacher asks follow-up questions, but it's the ideas of the children that begin that feedback loop. So when we prompt thought processes, we're really helping children tell us, well, how do you know that? Why do you think that happened? Why is that? Sometimes it's just simply saying, tell me more. Or maybe it's something very specific. You know, why would they need two of them? Or why is that getting colder? Why do you think that? So those why questions or even those open-ended statements are really important. All right, now let's take a look at that spider drawing video again. See what instructional supports that you observe in the video.
My spider!
Your spider, can I write those letters on there that says Desiree Spider?
It got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
15 legs? Okay, can I write that on here? Desiree Spider? What does your name start with? Do you know?
With a D.
D,
And a
E,
D.
Z, I, R, A, Y. Desiree Spider. All right.
Do you like my spider?
I love that.
My spider!
Your spider, can I write those letters on there that says Desiree Spider?
It got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
15 legs? Okay, can I write that on here? Desiree Spider? What does your name start with? Do you know?
With a D.
D,
And a D.
E,
And a D.
Z, I, R, A, Y. Desiree Spider. All right.
Do you like my spider?
I love that spider. You saw it here and you looked at it with that little magnifying glass, didn't you? Did you look at it with this big one?
All right, so maybe in just the short overview of those instructional supports, you've noticed how the teacher is in tune to what the child is doing and following her lead. That's not a part of the instructional support domain, but it's really important to the context of this video. She's definitely showing regard for the child's perspective and following the child's interests. Where we see this come into play with instructional support is she's really initiating some of those feedback loops, prompting the process of the child. She's recording, so even the act of recording what the child is telling her is a great way to see language modeling occurring. She's mapping out what's happening, which is another part of language modeling. She's asking those questions that help the child to think deeper. The child is producing and coming up with her own ideas and really thinking beyond just rote skills. So we see a lot of indicators within this just a small snippet. And when we do a full class observation, we're actually observing in classrooms for over 2 hours. So these are really good examples to think about those instructional supports that are so critical to our children's development. In weeks to come, we'll take a look at some other videos and we'll examine a few more ways to incorporate questioning and planning that really will lead to higher class scores. Thank you.